Rich Steeves, Managing Editor at TMC, here at ITEXPO Las Vegas 2013. Joining me now is Andy Land, Vice President of Marketing at UnboundID. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So for our viewers who might not know about UnboundID, tell us about your company, who you are, what you do.
Sure. So I run marketing at UnboundID. We're about a 5.5-year-old startup out of Austin, Texas, that built a company with one vision, which was consumer identity. So think of that as all the websites that you log into, your Facebook profile, Google profile, your subscriber data with your cell phone, your bank information when you do online banking, all that data, all that rich data needs to be managed. And there's a life cycle of it. You enter that business with your data. Sometime you might leave that business, and along the way, that data has to be managed. And by the way, that data has a lot of value to both you and the service provider. So our role in life is to help service providers manage that data the right way while involving the user, and where privacy kind of kicks in. As we've noticed in the world today, privacy is a pretty big topic, but we help them manage data the right way.
So Andy, you brought up just a couple of topics that are, as you said, hot topics all over the country, things that we cover on TMC all the time. So let's talk about a couple of these a little bit. You mentioned privacy. Obviously, privacy is on the mind of a lot of people based on recent national events and things. How does UnboundID fit into that concern for privacy?
Right. So about a year ago, we started realizing, we deal with service providers, big telcos, big financial services companies, big software as a service guys. They had a lot of data. They realized it's valuable. They're seeing what's happening with Google and Facebook's valuations, and they start to look at this data and say, what can I do with it? But they're all in highly regulated industries. So the first question comes up, well, how am I going to do this and not get in trouble? How am I going to do this and not hurt my brand? How do I do this the right way? How do I involve the user in the process? So we built a set of products. It's actually just called Privacy Suite. We didn't get all that interesting in the naming purposefully, because it is what it says. We help them manage a user's data, so one portion of that's consent, so that you can actually give real consent. I'm not talking about the one time you click a button and you never again see your data. I'm talking about actual consent to your data for a purpose. So I'm consenting to let you use my location only when I walk into your physical store, and when I leave, you can't use my location data anymore, which is not the case today. As you know, they use it all the time. And so we have a set of products that help manage consent. They help you manage transparency of the data, so you can give the user an actual view into his data. How is that data flowing? Is it going to just internal business units, or is it flowing to third parties? So, and also give the ability of the user to revoke or grant access to that data and the way the data flows. So, and then the final side of it is we enforce it at runtime. So when an application, whether it's an internal application or a third-party application, says, I need data about you, we look at the rules around that data, in essence, metadata on your data. Did you give consent? And are there any regulatory things that say I can't use this data? Because one thing that we do have in the US is the FTC is a heavy enforcement if you don't follow the rules. The rules are pretty lax, but if you don't follow those rules, the FTC will come after you. So we help companies make sure they don't get in trouble by actually enforcing those rules at runtime, so that data only flows to applications where the rules are met, both regulatory and consent.
So it sounds like this is a solution, and by the way, I do like the name, nice and straightforward. That's good for those companies you mentioned, so they don't violate regulations, so that they don't tarnish their brand, and it's good for the common person like me who is concerned about his data.
Right. Well, we kind of tried to think of it from a user-centric view. So we're all consumers, right? So what would we as a consumer want from our service providers? Because my boss says a great thing. He kind of calls the world hostages, victims, and participants. And it's kind of real simple. Hostage is like a service provider, like your cell phone or a bank. You have to have a bank in modern society. I know not everyone has banks outside of the
Sure.
The U.S., but in modern North American society or Western European society, we use banks. We use mobile phones. You must give data to those guys to have that service. In essence, you're a hostage. You must do it. Facebook and Google, you can argue you don't have to use Facebook and Google. Pretty tough these days, I think, for a lot of people, but that's where we kind of call it a victim. Once you give them your data, they kind of own your data, right? Sometimes I've heard another guy call it being a data serf. Your data is, given over to the feudal lord, right? And finally, what we've been advocating is what we call participant. Why can't we allow you to have better controls of your data, see how your data is being used, have choice on it, how it flows? That can all be done. There's nothing technology-wise inhibiting that. It's more kind of the will of the service providers to kind of think from the user-centric side, and that's what we're trying to help our customers do today.
Great. Well, as I said, it's a topic that generates a lot of interest, so if our viewers want to know more about UnboundID, where can we find you online?
Several places, www.unboundid.com, pretty simple also. Didn't get too cute there. Also, we are on Twitter at UnboundID, and also I'm on Twitter at AndyLandTX.
Great. Andy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.